And this might be a bit contrarian because I know most venture capital firms really want to focus on the TAM, and the TAM is important, but understand that travel is not monolithic. It's not like I don't want to see a TAM that's like $1 trillion market. Like you're attacking a certain segment of that market. So really understand what that segment looks like and be able to articulate how you're going to get there.
Welcome to Season 5 of Travel Trends. I hope you enjoyed our new introduction. I'm your host, Dan Christian, and as always, this podcast is where travel industry leaders come together to share and shape the future of travel. Over the past year, our Travel Trends audience has grown to reach over 125 countries, and we have become the #1 B2B podcast globally for the travel industry, a milestone I couldn't be more thrilled about, especially for those of you who are familiar with how this show began, which I'll highlight in a moment for those of you that are new to joining us on Travel Trends. But when I attended the World Travel Market in November, I was truly amazed to see the number of people that were lined up to attend our session. And although I was disappointed there was about 150 people that couldn't get into our session, I was really heartened to see the enthusiasm from our listeners and past guests of the show. And I just wanted to take a moment to express my deep gratitude to our audience, the amazing guests who've shared their time and expertise with us, and all of our partners who've supported us on this journey. It was just 2 years ago that we started Travel Trends, and we did 10 episodes in our first season to highlight many of my colleagues that I've been inspired by with their journey during the pandemic and what they were seeing post-pandemic. And of course, this all started because I decided to step out of my corporate role when my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he strongly tried to convince me otherwise. And my commitment to him was to create this show so that I could actually stay connected to the travel community that I love and be able to share these amazing stories. And I can't thank everyone enough for getting behind us and for listening and supporting and engaging. All of your comments made my heart really grew 2 sizes when I looked around the room at World Travel Market, and I see that in all the comments and the engagement, and now the expansion of all of our partners going into Season 5 in 2025. So Travel Trends certainly holds a very personal significance for me. And I just wanted to acknowledge the team as well that have been behind this since the beginning. Zach, of course, our producer, Catherine, who manages all of our guest bookings, Melissa, who does our social media, and Mel, who oversees all of our partnerships. And that's where your efforts have been instrumental to making this show the success that it has become. And Season 5, we've been overwhelmed with interest and engagement from the travel community. And I want to highlight to you all the exciting developments that we have planned for this year. So let's discuss what we have in store for 2025 and Season 5. The first thing is that we're going to continue our deep dives into the most important topics of travel. That clearly resonated with our listeners as our audience dramatically expanded in Season 4. We did over 30 episodes with 5 themes, and when we did our deep dives into adventure and to cruise and to travel advisors, we could see the audience growing and growing. And we want to continue that for those of you that are new to the industry, returning to the industry, or have been in the industry for many years and want to see these new categories and thought leaders that are really pushing the boundaries in this space. So we're going to be focusing on safaris, river cruises, multi-day tour. We're going to look at in-destination experiences and the role of influencers and how they're impacting travel. We're also going to have a number of one-off episodes like we are today on investing in travel. We're going to look at the rise of rail travel, short-term rentals, even sexual wellness in travel. Yes, that one might be a bit spicy. We're going to talk about the role of media. We're going to feature a number of high-profile executives. And as part of this, we're thrilled to have our 3 title sponsors returning, Propelic, Travel AI, and Stay 22. I'm very pleased to say that the impact that they have seen has been significant. I'm currently drinking a glass of water out of a custom-designed whiskey glass that was sent to me from Brennan Bliss, the Propelic CEO, who received several high-value clients that learned about him and his company from this podcast. I'm also thrilled now to welcome 5 new title sponsors that will really help us take the show to the next level. And so with that, I'd like to welcome and thank Colette, Flight Center, Travel Tech, Protect Group, and Flywire. You are going to learn more about them as our episodes continue, since you're going to be featured in every episode. And we also have more details about them on our website and links to the custom design pages that they've kindly created. We also have our theme sponsors back for Season 5, but this time we're going to be focusing on new categories. So we have Flightographer, Cloud Safaris, Tour Optima, Pernod Ricard, and Captio. Thanks again to all of you for your support. And as we invest further in our production, our travel plans, and our marketing, you're going to see far more video clips from us from all the sessions on our Instagram and LinkedIn channels. All of our episodes are going to be on YouTube, and now we're on TikTok as well. Of course, we have to be. TikTok is our next episode. All of the episodes are going to continue to expand into full video production. As part of our event plans for 2025, we've deepened our relationships with many of our partners that we worked with: Forbes Travel Guide, Focusrite, the Adventure Travel and Trade Association, Arrival, and we have a number of new events planned for this year. We're going to be at ITB, the Aviation Festival, ETC, and many regional events. You can find out all the information about the events we're going to be at. We've created a new 2025 events page at traveltrendspodcast.com/events. And feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in having us attend, record, or speak at an upcoming industry event. We're also going to be giving our listeners more reasons to subscribe to our monthly newsletters, as we'll be doing regular giveaways and incentives from our partners, which starts with Flytographer, who are giving away a free photo shoot to our listeners as part of our influencer series, and also 10% off any bookings for travelers or travel advisors by using the promo code TRAVELTRENDS. We're also going to be expanding to introduce a new Destination Spotlight series for 2025 as we expand into B2C and start releasing these monthly. Our first episode will showcase Colombia in partnership with Impulse Travel from my recent trip to meet their incredible changemakers. Our advisory firm Acceleration Team continues to grow with new partnerships with Global Journeys, We Road, Thayer Ventures, Blacksford Premium RVs, and we're going to be creating YouTube features to spotlight key startups that we've worked with or high-profile startups that we want to showcase to the industry, like GuestOS, iWander, Sherpa, and more. Now, let's turn our attention to the very first episode of Season 5, Investing in Travel in 2025, with special guests from Amex Ventures, Thayer, and travel startups. As some of you may know, I'm deeply immersed in the investment space in travel, and I'm very optimistic about the growth of our industry over the next decade, given the demographic shifts that we're seeing, the aging population, changing customer behavior, including the younger generation spending much more on travel. And so looking at what's driving this momentum certainly explains the surge in private equity acquisitions of travel brands and looking at the VC investments in this space. I mean, if we just look at Focusrite's Travel Forward report for 2025, which is a very comprehensive look at the global travel market, which they valued at about 1.6 trillion for 2025, that it's going to increase by about 8%, and nearly 65% of those bookings are going to incur online by 2026. We're talking about $1.2 trillion in bookings. And notably, funding for B2B focused travel companies has actually surpassed B2C for the first time, making up more than 50% in the end of 2024. This shift certainly appears to be, given all these generative AI use cases for B2B, like customer service, workflow automation, data analytics, a lot of things that we covered at our Travel AI Summit, and we'll have more details on our plans for 2025 shortly. But in addition to that, 2024 really saw the launch of several new travel-focused VC funds, which signals a fresh wave of investment poised to continue in 2025 as investors remain optimistic, prioritizing what they see as really sustainable growth. Europe in particular has actually led the way in funding, which is quite interesting. And there's been major investments there in mobility and in corporate travel, and many of these sectors that are expected to continue to expand in 2025 with this new capital as they innovate and scale. Skift actually noted that in 2024 was a record-breaking year for startup fundraising for the travel industry. And even when you take out the $5.5 billion that Waymo raised out of the 200 startups that they tracked, it was a total of $13 billion. But even if you just take that 5.5 away and it's 7.6 billion was raised, it's double than what it was in 2023. One of the things that stands out for me is tour operators, especially those offering multi-day, given my background. And they're certainly poised for double-digit annual growth over the next decade. I mean, this sector alone is projected to be $300 billion today and could easily grow in excess of $500 billion in the next 5 years. And you can see many of the players are all seeing growth in this category. One of the things that's driving that, of course, is going to be technology, and that's going to play an important role in that expansion, which unlocks a lot of new opportunities for startups. And another category as well that's seen significant growth, especially for those of you who listen to our cruise series, is just the number of passengers. I mean, we're looking at having 10 million more annual passengers coming into cruise in the next 3 to 4 years, according to CLIA data. So capacity is increasing in ships, in hotels, and infrastructure in emerging destinations to help support that growth. I mean, really, the bottom line is, after such a challenging time during COVID, the travel industry is poised for a bright future. And some of the stats we're seeing is that travel is actually set to outpace most other industries in terms of growth. So given all of that, I thought it would be a perfect way to kick off 2025 and season 5 to bring together 3 major investors and thought leaders in the travel space: Kevin Tsang, the managing director of Amex Ventures, Cara Whitehill from Thayer, and Matt Zito from Travel Startups. Together, they're going to share their investment strategies, they're going to identify emerging opportunities for all of our listeners, and offer advice for startups that are navigating this dynamic sector. We'll be right back. In today's fast-paced travel industry, businesses face constant challenges, keeping up with new technologies, meeting ever-evolving customer expectations, and promoting products effectively. The real struggle? Managing it all in-house. That's where travel tech steps in to transform your business. With over 25 years of experience, Travel Tech is one of the most trusted names in travel technology, offering tailored solutions to fit your unique needs. They make it easy to create seamless, bookable websites, manage and promote products, and automate everyday tasks, giving your team more time to focus on what matters most, your customers. Plus, Travel Tech is the go-to name in cruise technology with cutting-edge solutions for tour operators as well. Plus, Travel Tech has just launched Tech Talk, a new podcast for travel professionals by travel professionals. Explore the stories behind the biggest innovations in travel. Visit traveltech.com/travel trends or tune in to Tech Talk on Spotify and Apple. That's traveltech.com/travel trends and Tech Talk on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Are you looking for ways to grow your travel business through paid media and optimized SEO? Then you have to check out our friends at Propellic.com. They are the leading digital agency for growth in travel and tourism. Propellic offers bold digital marketing strategies to ensure your travel company's success. They have a remarkable methodology that has actually been implemented by TravelAI.com, and they are a leading SEO agency globally and offer a range of resources, a podcast of their own, a blog on their website, Propellic.com. That's Propellic.com. And don't forget to mention Travel Trends for your free marketing audit. Now, back to the show.
I've got 3 incredible experts with me, as you heard from that introduction, but I want them to give you a bit more detail about the company they're working with and a bit more background in the travel investing space. I thought we'd start with Cara, given your role at Thayer Ventures. So please tell us a bit more about Thayer Ventures. I think a lot of people have heard about Thayer if they were in the travel industry. So I'm keen to learn more from you today. But yeah, tell us a bit more about Thayer and your role there, please.
Certainly. So Thayer has been in the travel investing space for, over a decade now. I came aboard in January. Thayer is a little different than a traditional venture capital firm that you would think about in, Silicon Valley and that sort of thing. We focus mainly on travel and hospitality specific companies and adjacent spaces. So other technology that might be relevant or interesting to the travel industry, and particularly to our LPs. So our investors are primarily very large travel brands across travel and hospitality. And so they look to us to help them. We describe it as being that tsunami buoy out on the horizon, where we're looking 5 to 10 years out to identify things that might be interesting or relevant or potentially threatening to their business models. And then we bring those companies in, whether it's for investment or commercial opportunities for those LPs. That's a big part of what we kind of focus on from a thesis perspective. In terms of my role, I do kind of 3 different things. So one is, of course, supporting the LPs and understanding, what are their priorities and areas that they want us to be scouting for. The second is working with our portfolio companies, of course, and understanding, the things where they may need some extra brain power, extra pair of hands. And then third is deal flow. So, looking at startups that are out in the space, due diligence and things of that nature. So kind of a typical venture capital role, I would say. I didn't come into this space from any kind of finance background. I spent most of my career on the operating side across different brands, Expedia, Travelocity, American Airlines, and then worked for a couple of venture-backed startups, Deem on the corporate travel and loyalty side, and Traxo, which is a smaller startup in data aggregation, and really got the itch to get more on the investing side after seeing how these venture startups operate and how the venture capital firms are part of that innovation culture and the things that they can kind of help stimulate there. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And, through my relationships with Thayer, they had backed Traxo early on in its life cycle. That's how I came into the family there. So, that's sort of on the institutional side. And then I've done a bit of angel investing as well, which is a totally different beast than venture and also very interesting.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. That's one of the reasons I wanted you to be a part of this conversation. Not only you're a strong female leader in the travel industry, you're and someone I've got a chance to meet and get to know as well. So it's wonderful that you're representing Thayer Ventures. Obviously, they're lucky to have you. Chris Hemmeter is probably obviously one of the more well-known people in our industry from Thayer that they see on stage all the time, but you often more and more. And given your personal background in investing, that's another thing that I wanted you to be able to speak to today. So obviously, please by all means speak on behalf of Thayer, but speak on behalf of Cara Whitehill and what you've seen coming up in this industry. And I wanted to bring Kevin in the conversation as well, because I was thrilled to have Kevin join us from Amex Ventures. He's been a busy guy. There's been a number of deals that I've heard about just recently that all of a sudden American Express Ventures have been involved in, like Mindtrip is one of the most recent developments. So Kevin, I'd love for you to give our listeners a bit of an overview of Amex Ventures and your role there as the managing director.
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me on. Really excited to have the conversation today and to tell you more about Amex Ventures. So Amex Ventures is the strategic investment arm of American Express. And so really our mission is to help accelerate innovation for the company by engaging and investing in the startup ecosystem. For those familiar with corporate venture capital arms, you can think of us as one of those. It's become an increasingly popular model as corporations have realized it's a great way to drive innovation and work with the external ecosystem. In terms of my role, so I lead our consumer services investments coverage, and this really comes with a focus on what we would think of Amex's membership model, which comes with all these benefits such as travel, dining, entertainment, and finding ways to engage with emerging startups that are innovating in these areas that can help support our journey as we evolve our membership model as well. And then I also lead our portfolio management function. I guess for some context, Amex Ventures was formed in 2011. We've made a little over 100 investments since then. I was the benefit of joining American Express in 2011, and so I've been along for the journey. And as the portfolio has grown, that's also kind of grown as a function for our team as well. But in terms of how our company works, we basically invest in these startups, and I'll be looking for emerging themes that are exciting, identifying them, executing these investments, and then trying to find ways for us to drive partnerships with our kind of mothership post-investment.
That's great. Thank you, Kevin. And one thing I wanted all our listeners to know, of course, you're based in New York, but when I was getting a chance to get to know you and the team, and in anticipation for our conversation today, one thing you pointed out to me, because I saw your background was with RBC, or Royal Bank of Canada, and you're actually Canadian. So you're. I just wanted to highlight that for an incredible success story in our industry, and there you are leading one of these, a large corporate fund based in New York. So great to have another fellow Canadian on the show.
Yeah, no, I noticed you guys' connection in Toronto, so excited to have that connection with you guys as well.
Awesome. That's great. And I want to bring Matt in the conversation. So I know Matt Zito for many years, and it's one of my favorite emails I receive every week because he puts this amazing summary together at Travel Startups of all the companies that are currently available for acquisition. And he's an M&A guy, mergers and acquisitions, but he's invested in startups. So Matt, why don't you give everyone a bit more of an overview of your background in this space and what you do with Travel Startups?
Yeah, sure, Dan. Thanks for having me on your podcast. My role is I'm with TSI. It's a company we've had for a long time. It used to be called Travel Startups Incubator. We shortened it to TSI. I focus on mainly on 75% of my time on a daily basis of M&A, buying and selling travel companies. And so currently I have, to give you a perspective, I've got 7 buy-side clients. These are companies that have hired me to go out into the market and help them make acquisitions. And then I currently have 4 sell-side clients. So these are companies that I represent trying to sell them. I utilize the global network that I've built over my basically my lifetime. So my backstory a little bit is, I sit at the table in three ways. Like I've been an owner operator, so I built and sold two travel companies. I started with nothing, college dorm room story. So I know what it's like in the founder's shoes. And I've also raised capital to invest in travel startups. So from 2014 to 2019, we ran one of the first incubators in the travel industry called Travel Startups Incubator. We partnered with Amadeus. Yep. We invested in 21 travel tech startups. And then now I sit on the other side of the table is helping companies buy and sell travel companies. And I have a tagline. I say my role now is to help the travel startup entrepreneurs' dreams come true. Like that's what I try to do.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know you've got a great reputation in the industry. And a number of people that I know that have worked with you. And so, and I'm very excited not only to have you here, but given this conversation, because I'm also very bullish on travel in the next 5 to 10 years and what we're seeing from both venture capital and private equity and the growth trajectory, like the compound annual growth that we can expect from a lot of these travel verticals in the next 10 years is really exciting. And so there's more and more interest in this space and things are obviously heating up. And so I'd love to kind of start with a conversation that I'm sure many of our listeners that are on the startup side, when they saw the idea of the show, and I see it when I'm at any of the conferences, people are lined up to speak to you guys afterwards because, of course, you're the people with money that could invest in their business and make their dreams come true. And so I'd love to get a sense of what are some of the things you're looking for when you're evaluating those travel startups, because I'm sure that 90% of our listeners, that's one of the first questions they want to know the answer to. So I'm going to go back to Cara first and just kind of open it up for a broader detail from yourself, and then we'll go back around to Kevin and Matt as well. But essentially what I'd really like to hear from you are, what are some of the factors you're looking for when you're evaluating a travel startup, when you get that pitch deck or they come up and give you that elevator pitch? And Cara, I know one of the things that's incredibly important is a founding team. So anything that you want to call out when you're evaluating a new business investment for Thayer or on your angel investing side, what are some of the things you're looking for, even in the metrics? Are you expecting them to kind of hit you with their TAM and show you they got this massive market and how they're going to crack it? I think most entrepreneurs that you see have gotten reasonably savvy of knowing how to pitch their business, but clearly you guys see a ton of pitches. So Cara, tell us first and foremost, what are some of the things you look for when you're evaluating investing in startups?
Certainly. Yeah, it is. I would say it does differ a bit between when I'm wearing my angel hat and when I'm wearing my Thayer hat. But starting with Thayer, as I mentioned, we have strategic investors in our firm. And so the first lens that we typically take is, what are the priorities of those LPs, and does this company address or fit into any of those particular thesis areas? Whether they do or not doesn't necessarily mean we will or won't invest, but it's sort of like extra credit if you think of it that way. There are still plenty of cases where, a company may not fit squarely in the thesis areas from our LPs, but it's a really interesting opportunity where we think there's a good, ROI opportunity potential in the market, or it's a problem that we think really deserves to be solved and has the scale to do it at venture level. So that's sort of the first lens. I personally am less, we tend to focus on earlier stage. So kind of seed and early Series A. We do a little bit later as well. But at that early stage, the metrics really aren't that relevant because you don't have enough of a base of recurring steady operations for any of those metrics themselves to matter. But what I do want to see is an understanding of what the metrics should be. Right. So think of it as like a spreadsheet and all the formulas. You haven't filled in the numbers, but the structure of what that formula should look like. So that's something that I really want to understand. Founders are important. I really want to understand that they really know the problem well, and that they're wedded to the problem, but not necessarily the solution. Because especially in the earlier stage, you're going to pivot so many times. Like your product is going to change, your complexion of the target market is going to change, the market itself may change. And so I want to understand that the founders are open to kind of shifting gears where that may be relevant, because a really terrific founder will find a way to solve a problem and, find the right solution at the right moment for that. But if you're overly wedded to a specific path or a specific outcome, that's a little bit harder to back. And then, I'll say from the angel investing side, angels don't have the same math problem to solve for that venture investors do. Right. And that's something I know we'll probably touch on that a bit later, but venture scale opportunities are very different than, when I'm investing my own money. I don't have to answer to anybody except maybe my husband when I'm writing an angel check. And so I have more freedom and flexibility to invest in things that aren't necessarily going to get that. Of course, I would love the 50x return, but I'm perfectly happy if it's like a 3x, over whatever, 5 or 10 years or something, where a venture investor would look at that as like a fail. So, from the angel investing side, I'm looking at things that I personally think are important problems to solve in the space and really good founding teams that I think can get there.
Yeah, you mentioned a really good point there. And a colleague that I think we're probably all familiar with, Michael Zeisler, who runs FMZ Ventures, or FMZ, I guess if you're in the States, but for Kevin and I, we'll say Zed. And so, but one of the things he mentioned to me, Cara, very similar to what you just shared, he's a long-term successful investor, and he's more late stage. But his thing is like, I'm not looking for 10x, I'm not looking for 100x or even 10x. He's like, I just don't want to lose my money. So I'm very happily with doubling it or tripling it over time. And so, which is why he doesn't go early stage. And so, so I appreciate you sharing that. I'd love to get Kevin's view now on Amex Ventures, because you mentioned you have 100 investments, and I also noticed there was about 44 exits. So I'm sure part of obviously your mandate, given Amex's profile, and I think this is why it's helpful, I guess, to ask the question for people to understand what you're evaluating based on what success looks like to you in your role with those investments, at what stage you come in, and what sort of return you have to anticipate. So yeah, take us through some of the things that, Kevin, you evaluate when the new opportunity crosses your desk.
No, sure, happy to share that. And yeah, I'll definitely agree with a lot of the things that Cara said, so I'll try not to double up on those items. But we are early stage investors, and we do have a dual financial and strategic mandate. And so from the CVC lens, we're looking for both of those fits. I would say when I look maybe the startup, one of the questions I am asking is whether or not they're going after a big opportunity in a scalable way. And that's actually pretty important for us both financially and strategically, if you think about their ability to reach that venture return that Cara was talking about, but also because Amex is a large enterprise. And so for some of these innovations to really be impactful for us strategically, being able to do that in a scalable way is really important to us. And then the other piece that I also look for is almost like the why now component, like what has changed in the market, whether it be technology or consumer preferences, that's really creating this opportunity for a startup to be doing something disruptive that could really accelerate very quickly, because those are some of the trends that we'll be looking for. And then, yeah, beyond that, I think from the strategic lens, also trying to understand like where can it fit into the Amex ecosystem? What would be the potential ways that we could work with them? I think those are all going to be part of our criteria as we're meeting and evaluating startups.
And Matt, yourself, given that you sit outside of these two larger funds, and you've got a lot of flexibility in your own. So yeah, how do you see things? Because I'm sure it's much more. You've seen it all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it, right? So like, if I put my investor hat on, we did pre-seed investments. We put 25 to 50,000 in each company. And, we basically funded PowerPoint presentations, right? So yeah. at that level, it's all team, I think it's all team. Like that's what we bet first. And then we bet on the idea and market. I do want to say, I mentioned 75% as M&A, 25%, maybe 25% of my time, I actually help founders raise capital, right? So I usually do 2 to 3 deals a year. I don't do a lot because, but when I look at, when I look at a startup that I'm raising a company, it's called Planet Easy. I'm actually in process with them right now. And they're a B2B travel tech startup. They've got over 500 active travel advisors. They have an enterprise platform for travel advisors. I really like them. They're going to be profitable. They can scale. They've got a great team. I think ultimately they can probably be $100 million company. And so when I'm raising capital, for a company, I want to, number one, think I can actually execute and do it. And so those are some of the things I look at today. But I think one of the things, the most important thing that I've seen, like from the startup, to seed to Series A, is if you can't articulate to an investor that you can be $100 million plus company, you're never going to raise money. Like, I think that's the biggest detriment to startups that raise is I don't know if they don't understand it, or their business isn't capable of it, or the investor realizes that this is not possible, and then they give them some type of excuse to pass. But I think that's the key thing, and I think if you need to look at yourself, and you need your business, and if you don't think you can do that, you should really look at other ways to raise money.
We'll be right back. Attention travelers and travel advisors. Are you looking to elevate your travel experience beyond the ordinary? Then you have to say hello to our good friends at Colette, where guided travel gets a premium upgrade. For over 100 years, Colette has been crafting expertly guided tours that go beyond the stereotypes. With over 170 tours across all 7 continents, Colette offers something for every type of traveler, from culturally immersive small group journeys to single city stays and even river cruises. And with their industry-leading travel protection plan, you can cancel for any reason up to 24 hours before departure. Plus, when you book air with Colette, they even offer a private chauffeur service to and from the airport. Discover why travelers love Colette and why guided travel is thriving. Join the evolution of travel today at gocolette.com. Your next adventure awaits. That's gocolette.com. Attention travel operators, destination management companies, and accommodation providers. Managing payments doesn't have to be a source of stress. Meet Flywire, the modern payments platform built specifically for the unique needs of the travel industry. With Flywire, you can collect payments from travelers worldwide with ease. Enjoy faster payouts in your preferred currency, reduce payment fees, and offer your guests flexible, localized payment options they're familiar with. Not only does Flywire simplify your operations, but it also helps elevate your guest experience and boost your bottom line. That means you can stop worrying about payments and focus on what you do best, creating unforgettable travel experiences. Discover how Flywire can help your business save time, save money, and deliver truly seamless transactions. Visit flywire.com/travel trends to learn more. That's flywire.com/travel trends. Hey travelers, are you looking to book your next adventure? Then you have to meet our good friends at Flight Center, the travel-obsessed experts ready to make your next dream trip a reality. For over 40 years, they've been opening up the world to travelers from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and now Flight Center Canada is celebrating an incredible milestone, 30 years of helping Canadians explore the globe. From their first store in Vancouver in 1995 to becoming the official travel agency partner of the Toronto Raptors this year, they've been at the forefront of delivering travel experiences. At Flight Center, travel is more than a passion. It's their expertise. From flights and accommodations to cruises and tours and even business travel, they handle it all. Whether it's crafting a tailor-made trip or tackling group bookings, they've got you covered. Plus, with exclusive perks like their new Bundle and Save, $500 on tour and cruise packages, there's never been a better time to plan your getaway. From the smallest getaways to the biggest bucket list trips, your travel goals are just a call or a click away. Visit flightcenter.ca/travel trends to explore the latest deals, learn about emerging travel trends, and start planning your next trip. And now, back to the show.
I want to talk about the different investment rounds and stages. Cara and Kevin have already alluded to that. And I think people are getting a good sense of where they might come in. So as entrepreneurs and startup leaders are trying to navigate the space, obviously one of the most important things is to understand the different stages of investment. But of course, at any point on that journey, you could still end up having a conversation with Matt about M&A, because even early stage startups that are maybe not going to make it to the next stage, sometimes it's an acqui-hire, sometimes they get merged early. It's not always about just a high profile successful exit. There's many different scenarios that play out. So would you mind just giving everyone just a bit more detail about what you do in M&A activity and how you see that playing a role here, not only in the conversation today, but in the investment space in 2025?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it varies, like you said, it varies like from a startup to, a Series A, Series B to exit. Like one of the things I talk about the founders is like, you can sell at any stage in the life cycle, okay? I think founders make a big mistake and they don't realize that. They think they have to, sorry if I'm stepping on you guys' toes a little bit, but they have to go and do every round. Like this is the path. But you can actually sell at all different phases. In fact, one Kevin, one of your companies you acquired, Mezi, is a really good use case for that, right? AI chatbot, almost 10 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and you guys acquired them before I think they were even generating revenue. And so, you can sell at different stages of the life cycle. You don't necessarily have to sell when you're at the mature cycle. And there's buyers at different stages, right? So another deal, I recently sold a company called TripPlanner.ai. I sold them to a competitor, Layla. They're in the AI trip planning space. And they were generating revenue, right? But that was an opportunity they had. They took the opportunity to sell. They sold early. It worked out, and everything worked out for them. So I think that's like one thing is like you can sell at different stages. I would say today for my buy side clients, my 7 buy side clients, 3 of them are publicly traded. We all know who they are. 4 of them are private. They're interested in buying profitability. They're interested in buying companies that make a profit, right? And so these are later stage companies that have raised probably Series A, Series B, Series C. And but there are different types of buyers in the market.
Thanks so much for that, Matt. I think that was really helpful context. I wanted to bring Kevin back in on that note, just to make sure that all of our listeners actually do understand those stages. I would assume that a good portion of our listeners do, but just to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind, would you mind, Kevin, just giving a bit of an overview? I know Cara has spoken to it with like the pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, just to give everyone a kind of an overview of the investment stages. And then just remind everyone again where you get involved and where you guys focus.
No, for sure. So on Amex Ventures, we're focused mostly on seed through Series B investments. I will say I can kind of walk through how I think about them in stages, though in practice, every company's journey is a little bit different, and so some of it turns into nomenclature versus how it works out. But really, when you're building a seed stage company, it's going to be really heavily focused on building the product, having the team, having the vision, and bringing that to life. And then as you progress onto your Series A, it's going to be getting some of that customer traction, probably some early revenue signs and signals to show that you can build a business on it. And as you're progressing to the next stage, really building out that business model to show that this works and is ready for scale is how I think about it. Though depending on the type of company, it can change a little bit. From each company's journey. And for us, and we're looking at these early stage companies really focusing on the technology and the potential. And so, everything kind of gets factored in as we look into these startups.
Perfect. That's really helpful context. And Cara, just on that note as well, I know you've already kind of highlighted both angel investing and Thayer, but I would love, Matt made an interesting point there. If you're not looking for at least $100 million, and if you're trying to get on this journey of like whether you go down the path of venture capital, I would love if you wouldn't mind sharing your advice for startup entrepreneurs based on at what stage they should be considering seed, pre-seed, based on pre-revenue, revenue, and like what are some of the metrics you're looking for to advise someone, and what is their stage, and how should they go about their investment journey?
Sure. And it's I would say it's very much in transition. If you look at like before the pandemic, I think the general rule of thumb was, $1 million in annual revenue was your Series A bogey. Like that's what you were targeting. That's now more like a seed round in many cases, right? So it's kind of being compressed earlier. I think, it's not a hard and fast rule, and it's going to differ depending on what kind of company you are. If you're building true core AI stuff, you're going to have a very different profile than somebody that's building a consumer app, right? So there are some nuances there. But in terms of the way that we look at it from Thayer, I think, there's also people hear about pre-seed, right? And I think we tend to look at pre-seed as like pre-revenue, right? They have a product build or a prototype and they have some people using it. So they have some traction, but they haven't really generated any kind of real recurring stable revenue. We tend to look for that in the seed stage and probably later seed. We want to see that there's some proof of life. You've identified your ICP and those people are showing a willingness to pay for what you're selling and to use it. And so that's really, I think, one of the nuances. It matters less what the actual dollar amount is than the fact that somebody is willing to pay you any dollar amount and use that product. And then once you get to Series A, that's where we really want to see some repeatable revenue, stronger traction. People are, you don't have so much churn. People are actually renewing and using and showing some growth. So that's how we tend to swag it on our side. I think as you get deeper into Series A and Series B, that's where you're looking at product extensions or going into new markets and new regions and things of that nature, which are, just at a different level than what you would typically see at that earlier stage.
Well, that's really interesting. And one of the other things I'm also keen to understand and dive into collectively, but let's continue with you, Cara, on this topic, because I'd love to know both how Thayer and yourself then continue to support those startups, because it's one of the things I'm sure people have all heard of strategic investments and on smart money. And it's like, and people have probably watched enough Shark Tank episodes where they get pitched on why Mark Cuban should be their investor in their company. But I would love to understand. I think that's one of the things that startup entrepreneurs, especially if they're younger or less experienced, or it's their first venture, they are trying to figure out if they want to take this money and if they are, what the support is going to be like. Sometimes that's necessary. You guys obviously know it could just be an investment, as like a silent investor, but oftentimes the expectation is that you're going to help them on this journey. So tell us a little bit more about how you see the post-investment support. Sure. And how you support startups once you've invested in them.
Certainly. I think one of the things that we feel is our superpower within Thayer is our team and our network. We have very deep operating experience across different parts of the travel sector. And so we have, we've been there. We have the battle scars. We know what it's like to build a company and succeed or fail and, any element of that. And then we also have a lot of the relationships across all the different brands and major players. So we can, if it's a company that's purpose built for travel, they probably already have a fairly good footprint in the industry and kind of know some folks at certain levels. We can augment that with our connections at the highest levels of a lot of these companies. So we can open a lot of doors, make a lot of introductions. For companies that are outside of travel altogether, more of those, what we would consider the horizontal technology. So they're not purpose built for travel and hospitality, but they're technologies that could be really interesting. We can help them understand the distribution go-to-market landscape and open those doors for them as well, but really kind of be that kind of brain power on go-to-market in an area that they probably didn't necessarily pencil into their business model, right? So we can bring that extra layer of insight into their business. So at that level, that's one thing that we can do really well. And then, we have a really, we're investing out of our fourth fund. And so we've got a really nice portfolio of companies that there are a lot of really interesting cross sections where we can, cross-pollinate opportunities among our portfolio as well as our strategic investors. So, there's a lot of connecting the dots, I think, that we can do that is unique from where we sit.
Yeah, I've always heard that's one of the great benefits of working with Thayer. And obviously that's part of why people want to take investment from Thayer, work within your network and ecosystem. But I wanted to ask Matt on TSI, how does that work for you, given that you're doing 1 or 2 deals a year? I'm assuming there is also an expectation that you are supporting them on an ongoing basis in their journey. I know you do these boot camps as well. So tell us a little bit more about how you approach the post-investment support.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll put my hat on when we were investing. I want to just be upfront with, listeners that, I'm not angel investing right now personally. I'm using my network to help companies raise capital as a broker, right? So I'm in the broker position. So, when we were investing through Travel Startups Incubator, what Cara said, we helped our startups. We mainly focused on commercialization. We were really good at that. We had corporates that we introduced, and I think if you're raising money and you're going to take money from a venture or strategic, that's really key, especially at the early stage, is if they can facilitate introductions and help you commercialize your product. That's really important. That's really important. So. We continue to do that. I continue today. I've got a call with a company called Yaps that we invested in out of India. I'm pretty proud to say 5 of our companies are still active out of 21. We've had 2 exits and 2 mergers. So we've done, I think, really well considering where we put our money. But yeah, so I'm having a call with him tomorrow. I'm going to probably help them out. So I'm here 7 years later and we're continuing to help the portfolio companies. On my capital raise, just helping startups, like I said, I help 2 to 3 companies a year raise capital. I'm focused there on just, it's in the moment, right? It's about, this company I'm working with, Planet Easy, they need, we're raising $2 million. So that's what I'm going to focus on and help them get it. And then when that's done, that's done. If they sometimes companies will hire me as an advisor post it, because they see the value I've created. And so I'll come in and leverage my network going forward. And the last thing I just want to mention too is that we have a actual commercial product that we call the Travel Startups Incubator 4-week traction program, 4-week travel acceleration program. And it's like an online course, professional development course that founders and companies can go in. We took all of our knowledge base over like my whole lifetime as an entrepreneur and investing in startups and put it in like a 4-week program, and founders can go into it. It's pretty affordable and learn from it. And so I actually do some advisory from companies that come out of that. Can see how they progress and what they do, and then help them. I'm helping 2 young college students that came out of that program build a sort of a novel hotel application that are going to target the Gen Z crowd. So it's important, I think, as a founder, if you're raising not just the money, but people say the smart money, and I don't know exactly what they mean by that sometimes, but I think like the added value that they have, besides the money, that tends to be that's what's smart. Like what else can they provide you on top of cash?
Right.
That's the smart side.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Matt. And Kevin, in the Amex ecosystem, how do you approach that ongoing support? Because clearly you want any of these investments to be successful. So I'm assuming there's additional resources that you bring to bear to help them on that journey.
Yep. No, we definitely help our portfolio companies in the journey in any way we can. But I would say where we end up focusing most of our time are finding ways for the startups and Amex to find ways to partner together. And that can take a lot of different forms. Sometimes we're a customer, sometimes there's marketing related. There's different co-collaborations that we can do. Ultimately, that's a big part of our model because we're really trying to drive the strategic value for the enterprise. And we think there's a lot of mutual benefit that can come from partnering with a company like Amex and a new startup building in an exciting new area.
Yeah. Well, so obviously you've highlighted a really important point, given Amex's business and that strategic investments that clearly you have a massive database of customers, and you clearly Amex, and I do know I'm an Amex Platinum card holder, mainly because of all the travel benefits that come with it. So and I've worked on the marketing side with Amex to be able to target high net worth individuals that are showing a propensity for the type of travel purchases. So it's so I guess what I wanted to ask you as a follow up to that is that how does that then shape your investment portfolio with the companies you're looking at, and what are some of the trends that you're seeing? Because I'm keen to get all of your take on this, but what are some of the trends that you're seeing and where you're investing with Amex Ventures in 2025?
Sure. So in terms of how it shapes our investment strategy, we're always looking for opportunities for collaboration. And so ultimately, I guess the way it is, we would basically try to figure out a way to articulate, this is a way that we would partner with this company. And like I said, it'll kind of vary by company. And we have a lot of different assets that we can to work with. And then in terms of the trends that we're looking at, we think it's an exciting time for travel investing, especially at the earlier stages. I guess a few of the ones that I would highlight, as you mentioned, we made our investment in Mindtrip. And so pre-trip and discovery planning has been a big focus of us. And we're excited to see how that one progresses. With the new technology, we're also seeing some interesting things on-trip experience support. I think that's going to be an interesting area that's going to allow a much more seamless travel journey for consumers. And then I think because the travel ecosystem has so many disparate parts, but everyone's trying to pull it together, certainly seeing some infrastructure opportunities out there as well that we'll be on the lookout for.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you mentioned travel planning, because that obviously that could be a conversation unto itself with investing in travel planning. But I'm very bullish on Mindtrip. I know their team, so I thought obviously that was a smart strategic investment. So I'm glad you guys got in on that round. And but also, if we look wider, Cara, to look at given not only do you have those two roles, but you also have your Travel Tech Essentials podcast, which is terrific. I know you guys have done a couple of episodes on investing. So what are some of the big trends that you're seeing as to where companies are investing? The one thing I'll share is I'm hearing a lot from investors about investing in the plumbing, which is not the sexiest part of travel, but there's just so much to back-end integration and infrastructure that those companies that are solving that to make it a more seamless booking journey. I've certainly seen where investment is going in companies like Captio with a K. And so, tell us, Cara, what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there's a few things that are kind of percolating right now. I think one is, we travel sits on a legacy technology stack, and that's been ripe for disruption and innovation for many, many years. And I think we're starting to see components of that be addressed. So, you have all of the stuff that's been kind of going on with NDC, for instance, in the distribution space. And, that also could be a whole nother episode in and of itself. But we're seeing components of the tech stack really start to be addressed. And I think that's in turn going to unlock some other interesting downstream opportunities with respect to how travel is sold. I think, a component of that is looking at this generational shift, right? And the introduction of all these social commerce channels that didn't exist before, and how the younger demographic, they're not starting their search on Google or in a booking form on Expedia or Airbnb or what have you. They're going to TikTok, or they're going to Insta, or, they're using some of these chat-based, language-based models. And that's going to really change how travel is distributed and how it's consumed. And so I think a lot of the infrastructure layer for that needs to be rethought. And I don't think it will necessarily be rethought by a travel company per se. And that's why we like to look at some of these more horizontal layers of technology that are, doing interesting things in other industries, right? I think another part that is interesting to look at is, on the infrastructure part is digital identity and this concept of universal profiles, because that kind of interlocks with the things I just mentioned, right? And what's interesting about that is a lot of that is being driven by governments and massive investment that's going into modernizing like airport infrastructure, right? And digital wallets and passports and border control, and how you navigate through that experience. And it's sort of interesting to look at that and think, government is actually one of the drivers of this, whereas, government and regulatory environments usually are like a friction in any kind of innovation. But, one of the things we're seeing is the amount of money that's going into, airports and that sort of thing, which is a critical component for the end-to-end journey, right? And that touches, the whole customer experience. So there's a lot of things like that I think are pretty interesting, that aren't the sexiest or the most obvious, but those are areas that we're excited to poke around in.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to ask you too, when you're looking at these investments, clearly you're also doing the math based on the size of the market and how it's going to grow over the next 10 years. And some of the stats I'll just share with our listeners that I have been speaking about more recently is that, we're going to have this massive generational wealth transfer that, estimates are, it's about $80 trillion in assets that are going to get passed down. But before that's going to happen, from the silent generation and the baby boomers, this is the year that the youngest baby boomers turn 60. Half of them are retired. Half of them are about to retire in the next few years. And so as they sit on valuable assets and before they go into retirement homes, there's going to be a strong desire to travel. So that's one driver that I certainly see. And then clearly you've got changing customer behavior, especially post-pandemic, that even though we've kind of gone through this revenge travel, never a term that I like, but there is this idea when you take something away from someone, it's something that people are going to continue to remember that, and they're going to still seek every opportunity to be able to travel. And that seems to be sustained, as well as luxury. That's sort of really opened up high net worth travel. So I find this space so exciting for many reasons, but I was just curious, what are some of the metrics you look to, or like what are some of the, whether it's demographics or like what are some of the things that make you bullish and keep you excited to invest in the travel sector over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, one thing I would want to point out or add to that is there's a rising middle class in a lot of regions of the world that haven't really traveled much. And as these folks have more disposable income, they're going to be traveling more. And they're coming from countries that haven't typically been present on the international travel kind of roadmap when you look at it like that. So I think that the size of the travel pie is going to get even bigger. And I think it's important to think about, what do travelers from those regions or those countries need or require in terms of, airline capacity or, hotel capacity? Where are they traveling to? Are there cultural things that we need to consider? All of that. So I think that's another important thing to consider as the market overall expands.
No, that's a really good point. And Matt, to bring you back into this, one of the things I'm also keen to ask, by all means, if you have some points to share about how you see the industry growing. But I also would love to ask you a bit about investing in AI, since you've brought up a couple of AI startups you've been across.
Yeah.
There's one of the questions, are we at peak AI? Are we past that point? Is it, that whole .com era where you just needed to add that to get an investment? It seemed as if there was a very brief moment, but I'm hearing more and more pushback from investors, including the team at Plug and Play, who I spoke to recently, that if anything, it's actually putting them off. So, but that's where there's still opportunities with AI. It's still early. So anyway, what are some of the things you're paying attention to, and what's your take on AI investing in 2025?
Yeah, AI is a big bucket, isn't it? I mean, holy crap, so, I don't know sometimes where to go with that. But I look at it I like to talk about like real stuff, use cases, like stuff I see, right? So we're buying, I'm working on a deal. We're going to buy this company. It's an older TMC, it's got 50, 60 travel agents, right? With what I'm seeing in AI, like Hotel Planner just said that they're doing 10,000 calls a day with a robotic AI travel agent that's talking like a human, taking the bookings and processing it, right? Like I haven't tested it out, so I don't, I believe what they're saying. And I'm meeting in Focusrite next week. I'm meeting with an actual company out of highly funded company out of California that is basically saying they can do the same thing, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing, I think if they can execute on that, that's going to fundamentally change the industry, right? I mean, I can see it how on the acquisition side, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to integrate that? How are actual real people, travel agents, going to utilize it? Are they going to replace them or not? Don't know what the answer to it is, but that's like a real thing, right? On the consumer side. And then on the other side, like on the plumbing, on AI, I saw a company that has this technology they built that fixes APIs automatically. It writes the code. Like if the API connection breaks down, it just knows what to do, fixes it automatically. Like I guess it's hours is sometimes days to fix. So another interesting use case. I'd say another trend that I really love that I've been following, I've done some LinkedIn posts about, is the travel influencers. It's the new travel agents of the world that are going to have for the first time new tools like what Cara was saying, social media, Instagram. There's companies building technology tools to facilitate the sale of travel in different ways. There's platforms being built that are trying to aggregate the influencers onto them. I think that's really exciting. I think it's a new way to sell travel. I'm always interested in new ways to sell travel.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Hotel Planner. I know Tim Henschel quite well, and I think people who are following that are well aware that they're on their journey to an IPO. He was just in New York recently, so NASDAQ. It seems like that exact example you just shared is exactly sort of the drumbeat of going public to highlight, how profitable their business model, how they've integrated AI, and so they're on that late stage journey, to realize a major exit for a lot of their initial investors. So it's an exciting time for Hotel Planner for the reasons you mentioned. Their business is truly able to leverage AI and to be able to find cost efficiencies and major revenue gains. So it is very real. It's meaningful. Okay. But how do you decipher that from those AI startups? Because obviously you mentioned the planning space, and not that we have to do a complete deep dive into AI investing, but obviously we've also seen a little bit of that fall away initially. So are you more interested in established brands that are incorporating AI, or new businesses that are starting off with, in theory, a competitive advantage by leveraging AI technology?
Yeah, so from the M&A side, I'm definitely not interested in the startups. I'm interested in companies that are profitable and that can successfully sell. So trip planning, it's really difficult to succeed as a product in the industry. There's just more dead body. There's just thousands of dead bodies in there, and but what these guys were doing that we sold was unique and different. It was the AI that was a key component, and that there was interest in it. And I think I think they were very smart that they sold, because now I think it's going to be commoditized what they're going to be doing. But one thing I just want to mention just real quick about the industry, and I've talked about this on LinkedIn, is this is my fundamental belief. It's like my sort of method, my theory is that the industry operates in 10 years cycles, maybe 15, maybe it's even longer. It just takes so long for an innovation. You can penetrate the market, but you can't get adoption, right? So if you look at AI, the AI was like 50 years ago, and then Mezi, which American Express did, that was 7 years ago. We invested in a company called Go Hero that was similar to Mezi, an AI chatbot 7 years ago. And at that time, Resi and American Express hooked up and it worked out great for them. But there were just so many other companies that they couldn't make it because there just was no adoption. No one was interested in it. So now all of a sudden everyone's interested in it, and it's one of those things I think the entrepreneurs and founders have to understand is that the travel industry is super slow, especially on the B2B side. They're just super slow to adopt anything innovative, right? They're most likely not going to. And you have to figure out a way, if you're going to bring something like blockchain or NDC, into, the new thing in 2 or 3 years, how are you going to survive the long term? Because most of the time, it's just too difficult. Like you're going to be too early with it.
We'll be right back. Our longtime listeners will be very familiar with TravelAI.com, one of our sponsors from the very beginning. They've sponsored the last 2 seasons and also our AI Summit. You might actually remember they were recently featured in Season 4, the 2 co-founders, John Leotier and Chris Jensen, live from Focusrite, where they shared how their innovative use of AI is reshaping the travel industry. If you missed it, we highly recommend going back to hear their inspiring story of building one of the fastest growing, profitable AI companies in travel, entirely bootstrapped. Travel AI is revolutionizing the industry by blending AI-powered efficiency with personalized, human-centered travel experiences. From micro-segmentation to tailored travel solutions, their mission is to enhance every traveler's journey while setting the pace for travel's future. Here's how you can join the exciting mission. If you or someone you know in tech or AI is looking for a new career that combines innovation and impact, then head to travelai.com or follow them on LinkedIn to explore more opportunities. They are growing fast. Thanks again for your continued support. Hey, travel publishers and content creators. If you're searching for a fresh way to boost your revenue, then look no further than our friends at Stay22. Their AI-powered solutions work seamlessly in the background, adding an extra stream of revenue without altering any of your site's setup. In 2024 alone, their tools have powered more than 2 billion pages and helped their partners generate more than $500 million in GMV. It's time for you to join successful partner programs like Matador Network and Weatherbug and elevate your earnings today. Just go to stay22.com/travel trends, and you'll get details on an exclusive offer just for Travel Trends listeners. That's stay22.com/travel trends. Did you know that over 20% of people who purchase a ticket will upgrade to a refundable option when given the choice? By offering Refund Protect, you make it easy for your customers to protect their ticket purchase against emergency circumstances like illness, injury, accidents, and more. Whether you're an airline, hotel group, tour operator, ticketing platform, OTA, or transport solution, when you partner with Protect Group, your customers get peace of mind and you generate extra revenue. With a Trustpilot score of 4.8 stars and over 31,000 reviews, they treat your customers as their own, earning the highest customer ratings in the industry. To find out more, check out Protect Group at protect.group. That's protect.group. And now, back to the show.
So, Kevin, I'm keen to get a collective view on everyone for 2025, some of the things you're also paying attention to or being mindful of. Obviously, you've kindly already shared a number of the trends that you're focusing on and some of the areas you're looking to invest. But what are some of the other areas that, as Amex Ventures in 2025, whether it also be about the growth of the market, because I'm sure you guys have access to a ton of data that also gives some pretty clear indications. So you can kind of see what's happening with consumer signals and be able to make wise investment choices. So I'd love to hear what else you're looking at or paying attention to in 2025.
Yeah, no, happy to share that. And I think I was going to react to some of the prior comments. And so we've
please do.
But I guess, when I think about the growing market, I guess when I take a longer term perspective, I've always seen technology as like a very powerful enabler of travel and making it more accessible. So if you think of how the internet made it easier to like discover and research destinations and how GPS technology has made us all have more seamless travel journeys, like as we have new technology emerge, like an AI that can help potentially augment and make travel more accessible, I do think it'll help grow the pie. And maybe not to make it a startup idea, but even just as an example, as you think about like translation and how large language models could like almost remove language barriers and make people able to travel to more places more fluidly. Those are things that are exciting to me. And it's just hard to say exactly where the new technology will enable this more frictionless travel, but it certainly seems like it has potential. And we're definitely on the lookout for creative ways and applications of the technology for travel.
That's great. Well, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of interest from this. I want to make sure in a moment I give everyone a chance to know how to connect with you guys, find out more information, not to just overwhelm your inbox, but obviously I know that people like Jason Calacanis, who is obviously a very active early stage angel investor, and he very cleverly, really does put himself out there, because as he highlighted to me, and I had a chance to meet him, and he's like, 1 out of 32 hit, and he's like, but he'd rather make small bets, to your point, Matt, in a number of different organizations based on what the potential return would be. So, Cara, what else are you paying attention to for 2025, or some of the key trends that you think our listeners should be more aware of?
We touched on digital identity and that concept of, universal profiles. And I think that speaks to a broader theme of interoperability. I think we have a challenge and an opportunity in travel to really stitch together all of the disparate components of a traveler's trip. And we're not very good at that right now. I mean, it's still got too many points of friction when I rent a car. Like, why do I have to go back to my airline and dig around, look up my flight number, then go back to the car rental site, plug that in? And half the time they're not even why did I enter that? Because they're not communicating among themselves, right? So I think there's a lot of infrastructure layer around that concept of interoperability that we've seen happen in financial services many years ago. So we know it's possible, right? You just have to get all the stakeholders commercially incentivized to play ball there. And I think we're starting to see the technology's there. I think we're starting to see the commercial incentives kind of catch up. So those are areas that I'm particularly interested in. I think, a lot of, there's big chunks of digital transformation yet to occur in different parts of our industry. I think, you mentioned travel agents. That's a big one. We saw a lot of traditional travel agencies kind of close up, or folks retired. The pandemic did a number on the rest of them. And now we're starting to see this interesting transition where the Gen Z and younger millennial demographic are kind of moving back to using travel agents. And a lot of them are kind of influencers in that social context, but they need the tooling and the infrastructure to be able to do that job better. And I think there's a lot of, digital transformation to be capitalized on in that sector. I think we just made an investment in a company called Cruisebound that's doing a similar thing in the cruise sector, which has been kind of overlooked for a long time, right? But there's a lot of things to be stitched together about that cruise experience as well that I think haven't really fully been automated. So, those are, I'd say, the big theme: interoperability, digital transformation. On the aviation side, that tends to not be a venture focused industry, because a lot of the aviation needs are at such a large ticket scale that it doesn't really pencil from venture capital. But a lot of the supporting technologies that go into that are interesting, and watching what they're up to. So those are some areas as well. And I think the folks with outside of venture capital, they're investing in these new types of aircraft and new types of fuel and things like that, are going to unlock more regional point-to-point capabilities. And so that's interesting too, because if you play that out over the next decade, you're not going to have to connect all the time necessarily, right? Because it will be cost effective to have a nonstop flight from Cincinnati to Pittsburgh, right? Instead of, having to connect through Atlanta or Charlotte or what have you, or drive 6 hours there. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's a little farther beyond 2025 that we're seeing some of the groundwork be laid right now. And that's great for those of us that are early stage investors, because, those are the time scales that we operate in.
No, that's great. Thank you, Cara. And I want to finish up by getting one valuable piece of advice from each of you that you would recommend to startup entrepreneurs listening to this, whether it be a mistake they can avoid, or a signal that you prefer to be able to see conveyed to you. But I'm sure you each have a lot of wisdom on this subject. But I'd love to hear if you could share one piece of advice, what it would be. And maybe we'll start with Matt. And I'd also, after you share that, by all means, please let people know how to follow up with you, how to connect with you after this. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, so I would just say, you got to be persistent. Like, persistency is the key to, I think, everything as being an entrepreneur. There's times when to call it quits and give up. You generally got to have somebody else tell you that. And so, especially maybe in your family, but you just, never give up, keep going. And I've seen so many companies turn around because of persistence, especially at the earliest stage. You're never going to get it right. You always have to iterate. You're going to iterate, at least once, probably twice. I'd say that's the key.
Cool. And how best for people to connect with you after this, Matt?
Yeah, you can just go to, you can email me, matt@travelstartups.co. It's not .com, it's .co, or travelstartups.co is our website.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And Kevin, I don't expect you to give your email address. I kindly have it, and I will always only use it on very special occasions. But yeah, tell everyone what would be a great piece of advice that you like to impart to startups. And then also, please, how people can connect with the Amex Ventures team.
Sure. Yeah, I would say for me, the advice I would provide is while we're certainly looking for the big vision, understanding like the milestones and checkpoints along the way and being able to articulate that is important, because I think getting that alignment with the person you're talking to and just recognizing like this is how I plan to get there is really helpful in kind of pitching your story to an investor. And then for us, you can find me on LinkedIn. Also, we have our website, amexventures.com, where you can find out more about us and our investments and our team.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. And Cara, bring us home. Your sage advice and how people can connect you personally or professionally.
Certainly. And this might be a bit contrarian because I know most venture capital firms really want to focus on the TAM, and the TAM is important, but understand that travel is not monolithic. It's not like, I don't want to see a TAM that's like $1 trillion market. Like you're attacking a certain segment of that market. So really understand what that segment looks like and be able to articulate how you're going to get there. And I love the milestones point. That's another really important thing, because most of the travel opportunity and for successful startups to make that leap from seed to Series A and beyond is based on distribution. And you really have to understand how you're going to reach your target, whether it's B2B or B2C. Understand what that looks like and kind of do the math on penciling that in, because we want to see a big enough market to get excited about it from traditional venture scale. But also it's like it's just lazy to say travel is $1 trillion market. Like we know that already, but which part of that $1 trillion are you going after, and why is that important and relevant? So that's I'd say the biggest piece of advice I would offer there. And then you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Cara Whitehill. ThayerInvestmentPartners.com is our website. And always eager to connect. I'm also going to be at the Focusrite conference next week. So I'm always looking forward to meeting new entrepreneurs out there too. Not sure when this airs, if that's relevant, but yes.
No, it's all good.
We're always at conferences as well. So you can find one of our team somewhere out there.
Yeah, and to our listeners, if you ever have the chance to see any three of our guests here speak, don't miss the opportunity. I've had the privilege to see Cara speak a number of times, so don't miss that opportunity. If you see her at a conference, attend one of her sessions. And so I just wanted to say a sincere thanks from me to all three of you, because I've gotten to know you, and I was really excited to bring this session together. And I am very keen to continue the conversation and look to make sure that we make this a focus for our listeners based on the feedback we get from this episode. Thank you for making the time. And I certainly wanted to say to each of you, I wish you every success in 2025 for Amex Ventures, for Thayer, and Travel Startups. So thank you, Cara. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Matt.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for joining us on this very first episode of Season 5 of Travel Trends, where we explored investing in travel 2025. I hope you enjoyed this insightful conversation with Kevin, Cara, and Matt. We're grateful for their valuable contributions. Now, looking ahead, our next deep dive is going to be focused on the evolving role of travel influencers in 2025, sponsored by Flytographer. We're going to kick off the discussion with TikTok, then an innovative startup, Navi Savvy, and we have an impressive lineup of writers, journalists, and photographers who will help us unpack and share their perspectives on what's happening in this space. Now, make sure that you are subscribed on your favorite streaming platform to stay updated as these new episodes are released. We typically release new episodes every Wednesday, but you can also subscribe to our newsletter at traveltrendspodcast.com. And that's where you can also enter to win a free photo shoot from Flytographer. Don't forget to follow us on our social channels for video clips, highlights, and some behind the scene moments from these conversations. That's on Instagram, TikTok now, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Until next time, wishing you a fantastic start to the year and safe travels. We'll see you soon at the next episode of Travel Trends.